Are you ready to join the sisterhood? This is the Freedom Sisters Podcast, a place where sisters in service gather to talk about the journey of life and faith, from hardships to victories, and everything in between.
Y'all, I'm so excited to announce my very first online course. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast at all, you know that I love stories. And I believe that everyone has a story to share. Your story matters. And if you're uncertain of what your story is or how to go about sharing that story or just walking it out in your own personal life, whether you've got a business idea or whether it's just a personal journey that you want to share, I have a course for you. It's called On Mission, and we focus on your message and how to ignite that message and share it and serve and be open and authentic, and then build your community to share your message with them. It would be my pleasure and an extreme, amazing honor to teach you how to manifest the story of your life to share with others. The beta group is only $97, y'all. So go to my website, www.freedomsisters.com, to sign up today. I promise you, I'm giving you loads of bonuses. Go to the website. You'll read all about it. You'll see all about it. And I will see you October 12th online as we jump into the class. So join me on this journey. It's called On Mission. Thanks, y'all. Sometimes the magic of Instagram is so amazing to me. This is how I connected with this week's guest. Linsey Daley and I have been friends on Instagram for a few months. She has encouraged me a great deal, and I am just so honored that she's here to share her story. Linsey is the founder of Healing Our Heroes, and she's a real strong voice in the military sexual trauma justice issue going on right now in our country. I am just so profoundly grateful for her authenticity and her amazing courage. So listen in, y'all. It's a great conversation, but I would be remiss if I did not give a trigger warning and an explicit, because we do cuss a little in this episode, and that's okay because it's real and it's raw and it's amazing. But we also talk really deep for a while in this conversation about military sexual trauma. So take a break, pause, come back to this episode because it ends beautifully. The suffering was not the end of Linsey's story, and that's what I want you guys to take away from this conversation today. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Welcome to today's episode, y'all. Let me tell you how excited I am for this conversation today. I have the amazing Linsey Daley with us, and she is in the house. So good morning, Linsey.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get into this because I've been watching you for some time, and I'm totally like a fan, and I just really believe in what you're doing. So I'm so glad that you're here to talk about it all. First things first, girl, everyone's favorite question. I wonder if you will introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Linsey. I'm a Navy veteran. I served 14 years on active duty in the Navy. And then I got out due to undiagnosed PTSD from military sexual trauma. So after I started my healing process and working through that, I decided to open my own business, and now I teach mindfulness and meditation to survivors from military sexual trauma as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. So warning, everyone, prep yourself. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be a good conversation too. Linsey, could you just back up your story a little bit and maybe talk about your family of origin and maybe a little bit about your childhood and why you picked the Navy?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in a military family, but my mom's from Scotland, so I grew up in Europe, but also with a military family. So we lived in Scotland and then Iceland for 2 years and then Spain for 9 years. So I didn't really live in the US. So I grew up with both my parents and my two sisters. And I decided to join the Navy because I wanted to come to the United States, but I didn't really know how, right? I was like, oh, if I just get on a plane and go over there, what am I supposed to do? Like, don't have family. I don't know anything about it. So what seems like the best option would be to join the Navy because my dad was in the Navy. And I felt like that was my safety net, right? Of, okay, well, I'm not going to have my parents. So at least I have like that safety net. I know I'm going to eat every day. I know I'm going to have a place to sleep. I'm going to have a job. So yeah, in 2004, I got on the plane from England to Chicago.
That's so wild. Like you're a natural United States citizen because your dad, right? And you were
Well,
born out.
technically, he's my dad that raised me. So he's not biologically my dad, but he met my mom when I was 2. So I came over on a green card.
Oh, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
That's so wild. I love that. I love it though when that works out that way because there's a lot of really good people who join the service as a way to gain their citizenship. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. For me, it's one of the right ways to come into the country. I think that's really cool. I was curious, like you said, Scotland, where are your ancestors from? Are you just from Scotland or is it
100% from Scotland. And I did my like 23andMe, thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband and we both did it. And his has like all these different colors, right? Like, oh, he's Mexican and Native American and all these things. And then mine was just like Scottish, 99.9.
That's so fun. That's so fun. Does your mom have the accent? So how come you don't have an accent?
So my mom's accent is heavy. And I dropped my accent when I was younger because when I went to school in Spain, they used to make fun of me all the time. All the kids would be like, say this again, say this. They probably weren't making fun of me, but that's how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated it. And so I was like, I'm not going to talk like this anymore. And it took me like a year and then that was it.
Like done. And then my final question about your family origin. So you said you have 2 other sisters. Are you the oldest, youngest, middle?
I'm right in the middle.
Right in the middle. Oh man, so you got that middle child syndrome, huh?
Yeah.
I was the baby. So my sister Amy, my sister Sarah, Amy, and then Carrie. And so I loved having sisters. I don't know. I have a stepbrother now, but I don't know what it would have been like having boys in the house growing up because it was all girls. We had some fun together and lots of fights. And, they're my best friends now. So, but I always love it when other ladies come on and they were sister right from birth too. So in a house full of sisters. Anyway, I digress a little bit. So I want to know just a bit more about your time in service now. What did you do in the Navy? We kind of talked about why you went, but where did you go when you were there? You served 14 years. So where were your duty stations? And maybe share your favorite experience that you had and maybe any deployments.
My first duty station was Sigonella, Italy. And then I'll just give you the duty stations and then go through them. So the first one was Sigonella, Italy. And from there, I went back to Chicago and I worked at the boot camp clinic. And then from Chicago, I went to Japan and I was on a ship, a destroyer. And then from Japan, I went to Millington, Tennessee and worked at the Navy Personnel Command. And then from Millington, I went back to Italy. And then from Italy to Arizona, and that's where I got out. So I was a hospital corpsman. And I think my favorite experience is probably going to be the ship that I was on in Japan. So we worked a lot, but we were out to sea a lot. But it was just like the best experience as far as camaraderie and like feeling like a family in the Navy. That feeling that I joined for, I didn't really get in the hospital setting, but I really felt that on a small ship.
Oh, that's cool. And so what does a hospital corpsman do for people like me that were Army and don't understand the Navy world at all, or for others that are listening that have no experience?
Yeah, sure. For me, I was a quad 0 is what it's called. So I didn't take any specialty. So I could work in an administrative role. I could work on the ward. I could work in the ER. I could work anywhere that's not a tech specific job. So not x-ray, not lab, not pharmacy, but just anywhere that they could put a general duty corpsman or medic.
Awesome. So you have definitely a love for service and helping others, especially in some capacity of healing and all of that. That's kind of just a part of who you are because of what you're doing today. Now, I know that in your story, there's an event that has happened that has overshadowed the good experiences that you had, which if we can just like start talking about that, but also I always like to know what you liked about the military too. And I'm just thankful that you had some good experiences that you can cling to too in this time of uncertainty. And then I also want to talk about your undiagnosed PTSD. What do you mean by that? And so we could start with that first. What do you mean that it was undiagnosed? And then when did you realize that's what you had?
So I knew for a long time that I was suffering from PTSD. I just didn't want the label of PTSD. And I didn't want to seem weaker by getting seen for PTSD, but I knew all of the symptoms and this like spiraling, and we'll get into that later. But I knew for probably 10 years that I had PTSD, but I didn't want to get seen for it. So I tried to get seen for different things instead, like, oh, I really have bad anxiety. Can you help me with that? Or I have depression, so I want to get help for that. But I'm never actually addressing the cause and what was really going on with me.
Gotcha.
So I didn't actually get help for that until I started transitioning out of the military.
Okay. So then wherever you want to start, like, what happened, the 5 W's, and then go from there in your story of the spiraling and all the other things we can talk about. But just where you want to begin with your story.
Sure. So in 2004, I joined the Navy, and I went to boot camp, went to my school, and then I got orders to Sigonella, Italy, which was super exciting to me because it was my first tour, but my dad's last tour was in Italy as well. So he was doing his last tour and I was doing my first tour. So I don't know, it was kind of cute. He wasn't in Sicily, but he was on another island. It was super close and we got to visit a lot. But so I had barely checked into the command, and I met this guy who was very well known at the command, super nice, charismatic, super friendly and helpful. And I just kind of connected to him, and we were hanging out. He came to my barracks room, and there in Italy, it was 2 rooms. So you shared a common area, but you had your own bedroom. And so he came over, I was watching a movie, and he asked if he can come in. And I said, of course, because I trusted him, right? So not a big deal. Yeah, come in, watch the movie. So he came in and we were watching the movie, and he started getting close to me, scooting over a little bit, kind of touching his hand on my leg a little bit. And I was like, oh man, this is really uncomfortable. So I told him hey, I don't think this is a good idea, were the words that came out of my mouth. And his response was, well, this is going to happen whether you want it to or not. And I had never been spoken to like that in my life. So I was shocked. I was like, what does that even mean? Right? What are you talking about this? What is this first? Right. And I couldn't even speak. I was like, well, I don't even want to watch this anymore. And he's forcefully now holding me and pushing me back. And I froze. So I froze and I was raped. And he got up like nothing and left the room nothing, right? Just walked out. And I remember thinking no way, that did not just happen to me. That wasn't me. That was it just felt completely out of body, right? That really didn't happen. I didn't even want to deal with it that night. So I just kind of didn't think about it. I, showered and did all the things that they tell you not to do because I felt disgusting. And you're not in your right mind when that happens to you. Well, I'm not. I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I was definitely not in my right mind. I wanted to forget about it. I just wanted to feel clean, and I washed everything and I cleaned myself, and I went to bed that night. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to handle this. We worked in the same place. So I went to work and I talked to a female supervisor and I told her, I was raped last night by this person. And her response was, what do you mean you were raped? Like, what happened? And I'm like, I was raped. What do you mean what happened? And so she said, well, did you say no to him? Or did you kind of like give him, like make him feel like it was okay? And I'm thinking, I'm 19 years old. I'm terrified. And I was like, well, I didn't say no. I said, I don't think this is a good idea. She said, well, you didn't say the words no then. And so I started internalizing that, but holy shit, did I want that to happen? I should have used different words. So maybe it's justified because I didn't say the word no, right? So she told me there was nothing to report because it was his word against mine. And he's been there a long time and they just don't think that he would do something like that. So I completely internalized it. And it was easier for me to deal with if I told myself, okay, I wanted that to happen. I didn't say the word no, so I let it happen. And so I just kind of went with that narrative for a really, really long time because it just seemed like it was easier in my mind to process. But no matter how many times I said that to myself, your body knows.
Yeah.
Right? Like your body is like, that was definitely not the case. And your heart knows like that was definitely not the case. So I began to spiral completely out of control. I mean, I was drinking every single day, every day. I was showing up to work late. I wasn't showing up at all. And
Immediately. Or how many years later was that?
oh no, this was immediately, same command.
Okay.
Like they told me there's nothing, or not they, but she told me there was nothing that was going to be done. And I really didn't know how to handle it. I thought I had a hold on it, but really I was just a raging alcoholic. So I started showing up to work late. I wasn't showing up to work at all. I was starting to get into fights, like when I would go out at night, and I didn't show up one day at all. And nobody even knew where I was. I was in my barracks room, passed out drunk, but no one came to find me until like after lunch that day, like on their lunch break. Then they came to look for me. Like they came to find me at noon and I had been passed out drunk all day. And they told me to get in my uniform and get to the hospital. And I was told that I was going to be NJP'd, so non-judicial punishment. So I was going to captain's mass. That was a very interesting time to go. It was an open captain's mass. So what that means is everyone in the hospital was called to come watch me get in trouble. And
What?
yes, girl.
Like public humiliation?
Yes.
Holy
So
crap.
that, but here I am in my dress white. I mean, this wasn't the same day. This was, like a week or two later.
Well,
or something.
thank goodness, because you would have showed up reeking of booze. Probably would have been worse.
Right. They get on the 1MC on the mic or whatever, for people that don't know what that is, like the PA system in the hospital. And they're like, attention in the hospital, attention all staff, open captain's mass will be held in staff education and training, telling everyone that they needed to attend. And then they marched me through the entire hospital with the MA, the Master at Arms, behind me and my C bag so that they can inspect it. Marched me through the hospital after they've announced it so everyone knows that it's me. And then I have to walk through the entire command up to my CO at the podium while he tells me like what a piece of shit I am.
Oh my gosh. My mind is completely blown. Do they still do this in the Navy?
Yeah, I haven't seen an open captain's mass in a while, but
Whose idea was it to do the open captain's mass? Is it the commanders or was that your supervisor? Like who
I
suggests?
have no idea.
Okay.
But I mean, the commander has to sign off on it.
Yeah.
Because he's the one holding it. So ultimately, I would think, I don't know whose idea it was, but ultimately it was his choice.
Like the first thing that comes to mind for me was like, can we say scarlet letter? Like that's what the first thing that came to mind is like how much shame that they tried to, they being the culture, the community in that book and that story on the lady, like it was all her fault. And so then she's like walking around town and constantly shamed this open, right? Shaming. And that's like the first thing that I thought of. And then the second thing
is I'm just like flabbergasted that this is even a thing, because you should always, good leadership is you praise in public, you reprimand in private, because you need to correct bad behaviors, which showing up not to work is technically a bad behavior.
Yeah.
But let's find out why, right? Let's not just assume you're a shitbag sailor. Let's find out why you're doing what you're doing. And then the third thing that came to mind is like, you're brand new. This is your first command. So maybe they just were like, oh, she's really not conforming to military culture. Maybe she made a mistake. And so leadership just sees young, female, new, not conforming, and didn't realize maybe there's more to the story that happened after you were here. Because it's not like you were ignorant to Navy lifestyle because you grew up that way. You saw what your dad had to go through and do and be expected of you. And so that's really interesting, though, that that's what they chose to do. So your first offense?
Well, it wasn't my first offense, because remember I told you I had been showing up like late and drunk, and so I'd been talked to, but no one had ever asked me like, what is going on with you, right? Like, I was screaming for help, and I'm big on, if you do something wrong and you get in trouble, sorry for you, right? So yes, I should have gone and gotten in trouble, because they had talked to me probably 3 or 4 times before that.
When you say they, is it the same woman who you reported the rape to, though?
Yeah.
See, and I think that's where the trust, I don't know, like,
Yeah,
it sucks because nobody else was you could report to, or that you felt like you could because you were so young and she was your supervisor.
And when you're, like when you report it one time and someone tells you they don't believe you, or your feelings aren't valid or whatever, it's not something that you want to bring up again, because that feeling is just so horrible. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, I don't want to tell someone else for them to say the same thing to me.
Yeah. And I hate this conversation. Like, I hate that I have to have this conversation so many times, but it frequents on the podcast because of the reach that this rape culture, the military sexual trauma culture, really, it infiltrates in every rank, every position, whether it's your first year or your 10th year or your last year in service. And we just continue to have this conversation over. So I'll give a trigger warning at the beginning of this, but if anyone needs to take a break or pause the show and come back to it, or you need to reach out to Linsey or myself or any other organization, like, reach out to us. We can help connect you. But as you're listening to this, it's pulling up some memories for you and you need to take a break, please take a break, because it is tough to hear. And we totally get that. So I'm just like, there's every story is different, and I cannot believe that this happens. Like,
this is actually the first time that I've gotten into detail about not the rape. I've talked about that, but I just realized that I haven't actually shared in detail about the NJP and about like being reprimanded after. I've shared a little bit, but I haven't like actually gone into detail about it.
So. Okay, so let's go to the next step then. You get up to the podium. What happened?
So I get up to the podium. I knew before I went that I wouldn't be able to speak at all. So you have an option of, do you want to write a letter to the CO to read, or do you want to speak? And so I chose to write a letter. Wrote this man a letter. It was like a heartfelt, like, I'm so sorry for what I've done, like what I'm going through. And it was kind of, I don't remember exactly what it said. It was so long ago, but I know that I was like screaming, like, help me, right? And I stand there and he just is going in on me. And I'm standing there and I'm trying to stand at attention and like hold my upper body straight. And then my legs start like wobbling, right? Like crazy. And then I try to hold my legs straight and my upper body is like shaking. And my friends were telling me afterwards, like, I really thought you were going to pass out. Like, it was so hard to watch. And I just like stood there and took it, but I was like dying inside, honestly, because it's someone that you look up to. Like, I really looked up to this man as an authority figure, but also kind of like someone that's going to take care of us, because it was a small command. And I just felt like at that point, there was nowhere else to turn. Like, if the top of my command is telling me that I'm just a piece of shit and there's no saving me, like, put the bottle down is something that I remember specifically being said to me.
And that.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Maybe you need to put the bottle down. I was just like, oh my gosh. So when he told me that I was getting 20 days restriction and 20 days extra duty, I felt lucky. Isn't that crazy? I thought, oh, thank God I didn't get any money taken from me, or I didn't get any. I felt lucky to get 20 days restriction.
And extra duty.
And extra duty.
Okay, so in that experience, was your perpetrator in the audience?
Yes.
And do you remember seeing him in there, and what were you thinking, or what did his face look like to you in that?
I don't remember seeing him because it was the back of everyone's head as I walked up to the podium.
Oh, but he was in the audience.
But he was in the audience, yeah. And so that was even like harder, obviously, because thinking back on it, I think like you know this shit's your fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the time I wasn't thinking about him, so I don't know like what it felt. I can't remember what it felt like. I was just terrified.
Yeah.
I was terrified. I hated being in trouble.
Yeah, I think, that immediate what was happening at the moment is the forefront of your mind and not him necessarily. No. Okay, so you worked there for how many more years? How long were you there in that command? And how many more times did you have to interact with him? Did he ever talk to you after the event? He just did his thing and never approached you again? Or like, did you have to work with him?
I didn't have to work with him. I wasn't approached by him again, and they put me on night shift after. So I rode out the rest of my time, like another year. I rode out the rest of my time on night shift, and that's just how it went for me. I saw my team only because I worked on a labor and delivery ward, and I just saw my team at night, and I just kind of rode out the rest of my time still drinking when I wasn't at work and being at work when I had to be at work.
That's so interesting. Like he his only intention listening, and I'm assuming, and I'm speaking for somebody that obviously I'll never meet because I'd probably punch in the face, but he like had to me, like his whole purpose was just to bag you and then pitch, like never talk to you again. That's disgusting. I don't understand people with that mentality. And then like to do something so egregious and then just get dressed and walk out of the room. Like, I just don't understand that. So do you know if he continued to serve? Are there any other victims that ever came forward? Do you know anything else about him?
I don't know if any other victims came forward. I do know that my friend told me that he got out of the military. But I don't really know much other than that because I haven't really looked for it.
Wow. Well, Linsey, that's crazy. So you continued to, once you left that command, did you continue to have problems, or once you left there, you felt like the burden leave you, or what happened?
So unfortunately, for every woman that I've ever talked to, there's never just one incident, right? So when I went to my next command, I was never raped again in the military, I'll say that, but I was sexually harassed on the regular throughout my Navy career. I mean, my next command, I was told by a Navy chief, which is an E7. When I got orders to the ship, leaving my command there, I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I get to go to a ship. I get to do like Navy things. His response to me when I was like, oh, I got my orders, I'm going to a ship, his response was, well, just be careful because it'll only be a matter of time before you're bent over fucked in the engine rooms because that's all women are good for anyway. What? And mind you, it's in a room full of people. It wasn't just me and him. There was like 5 other people there. Nobody said a word. Not one single. There was other women. There was other men, different ranks. Nobody said a word. There was an officer. There was an 03 in there. Nobody said anything.
Wow.
And I just kind of like turned around, like feeling kind of like it's just going to be another one of those commands. Like, great. When I first got to that command, there was an E5 that just like would not leave me alone. And he would regularly say things to me and I would report it. And then they would tell me like, oh, you can't take a joke. Like, he's joking, obviously. Come on. Like, why can't you take a joke? And so I had dealt with that through that command. And then at the end, for the clinic senior enlisted leader of the entire clinic to say that, it was like, oh, is that what ships are about to? Great. Now I'm going to go to this next command.
Mm-hmm. So what did you do to mentally prepare yourself?
I don't even know what I did to mentally prepare myself, if I'm honest. That part of my life is like kind of a blur.
Mm-hmm.
I remember bits and pieces.
So did you continue to drink to self-medicate through this?
Yeah.
And you continue to show up, you continue to get promoted. You served for 14 years. So was there ever a time, I mean, I'm assuming on the Destroyer, maybe, I don't know, because you felt that was your favorite experience, your good experience. So was there ever a time where you didn't encounter some kind of sexual harassment?
Yeah, it was on the ship, actually, funny enough, because I know a lot of people say they had a hard time on their ship, or they've, a lot of stuff happened to them, like on deployment or underways and stuff. But I was on a ship of less than 300 people. There was only like 12 or 13 women on my ship. So I was nervous, honestly. I was like, oh, how is this going to go? All these men and not very many women. There was a female E6 that worked in our admin department, and she was like the mom of everyone, right? Like she just kind of like took everyone in and like under her wing. And then we had a female CMC, which is the command master chief of the ship. So the person in charge of all of the enlisted people on the ship, she was female. And I was triggered by them at first because I didn't trust female leadership, right? And so the more they tried to like bring me in, the more I fought. And I was like, I just don't like working with women. Like, what? Just leave me alone, but they never, ever, ever backed down. And they were just really amazing people. And then my immediate supervisor was an E7 as well. There was one E7, the chief, the IDC, which is an independent duty corpsman, and then there's 2 corpsmen with him on the ship. So 3 people in medical, no nurses, no doctors. He was so quiet and just like I think he's exactly what I needed in a leader at that time. Like he was just very quiet. He let me learn. He let me do what I needed to do. He taught me so much about being a corpsman, and like he wasn't in your face. Like he was just so quiet and kind, and exactly what I probably needed at that time. And so his mentorship really like turned my whole viewpoint of the Navy around.
And what year was this?
That was in 2008.
So 4 years in.
Yeah.
Which is probably, I think if you would have had another leader at that point, like that was your 3rd command, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you would have had another leader like your first 2, you probably would have given up a lot sooner on the Navy as a place to serve. But you went on to serve another 10 years, and it was probably because of that pivotal shift in what you saw as another option, another example of leadership. And I think I'm thankful for that, because like I think it's really awesome when women serve. Like there's such a legacy that we step into. These women who've come before us have done the hard things to make it easier for us, even though it's still hard. Like I'm not trying to sugarcoat, like it's easy, we just get to do what we want, and here we are. Like we're still putting in the hard work, and every command, any unit I ever showed up to, I had to reprove myself. I could have been PT stud, rocking the PT badge on my PTs, and still had to show up and prove that I could do PT. And it doesn't make any sense, because the guys show up with the same thing, and they're just like in like Flynn and a part of the group without having to prove themselves. So we're still having to show up and prove ourselves. But I'm really thankful that you were able to continue your journey, even though there were some wounds there, to manifest this dream, this call to service in your heart to serve. And so thankful for good leadership. Sometimes they do exist, people.
They do, yeah, for sure.
So Linsey, is there anything else about like that time in service? Like you did, so technically, I mean, you reported next day, you continually showed up and said to people that were in charge, hey, this person's making these comments, I don't like them. And everyone just kept pushing it off like it's a joke or it's hearsay, your word, his word. So is there ever a time, you said when you were getting out, that you finally reported, like officially reported? And there's a lot in the conversation right now that's going on because of some glaring things that are happening in the military that are like, what is official reporting and what is not official reporting? So you officially reported on your way out of the Navy?
So I never officially reported, because it was like so long after. And my thought was, it's such a personal choice if you want to actually like name and report, what happened to you and who did it. And to me, I got to like a healthy place and I didn't want to go back and relive that. And I didn't want to put myself through like re-victimization and that kind of stuff. So I did finally say what happened to me again to a representative of the VA, but I never officially reported.
Okay. So when you got out at year 14, honorably, you served your time, ETS, end of story. Like no other people weren't forcing you out. They didn't diagnose you with any borderline personality disorder or any of that stuff.
No.
That's good. That's good. That's a bonus.
I mean, they sent me to alcohol rehab twice in the military. But surprisingly, they didn't kick me out, which you're not supposed to be able to serve like after the second one, I think they were saying. But they did diagnose me at 20 with alcohol dependence. And they did send me to rehab, intensive outpatient twice, within my first 6 years in the Navy. But I was still able to serve after that. And yeah, I chose to get out at 14 years because I just couldn't take it anymore. I mean, the sexual harassment didn't stop at those incidents that I, told you about. It was throughout my career. And I felt like I was dying inside. Like, honestly, my last command that I went to, there was so much happening to the people around me and I couldn't do anything about it. And it was so triggering to me that I was like, sitting down with leadership, crying my eyes out because oh my gosh, I'm going to get emotional. I haven't talked about this, but because
it's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Take your time.
So one of the kids that worked for me tried to commit suicide. And it was such a small command that they were like my kids, even though they weren't old enough to, like, I wasn't old enough to be their mom, but he tried to commit suicide because he was just suffering like so badly. And I sat down with leadership to talk to them and they didn't care. Not just because they gave off this impression that they didn't care. They honestly, the things that came out of their mouth, I was crying my eyes out and they're like, why do you care so much?
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what do you mean, why do I care? Why do I care about another human being's life? Like, why do I? And I just knew in that moment, like, I can't do this anymore because I just felt like I couldn't it was affecting my whole life. It started affecting my marriage. It was affecting, I was so depressed. I would go home after work and go to bed like I wasn't parenting. And like for 6 months, I think I just went to work and went home and went to bed. Like I had no relationship with my kids, with my husband. And so I just was like, this for me, and I hate generalizing and saying like the whole military is toxic or, because that's not a true statement. But for me personally, it was just such a toxic environment that I couldn't do it anymore. I seriously wasn't sure how I survived that long. And I knew that it wasn't going to be much longer that I could like hold it together.
Yeah. When you say you don't know if you could have survived, were you starting to have like suicide ideations and things about just not being here at all?
Oh yeah, I struggled with suicidal ideations for years. And the only thing that kind of held me together was thinking of my parents. I didn't want to like hurt my parents, when it all first happened.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 4 years I suffered like just wanting to die.
Wow. So where did you find your hope to not end it all?
I got pregnant with my son in 2010. And that was the first time that I like ever felt unconditional love, really. Like true, this person loves me no matter who I am, what I do. I mean, holding him for the first time was like the best thing I've ever felt in my whole life. Like, you know, you can't even put it into words.
Right. So giving life,
Yeah.
bringing life into existence gave you life back. That's beautiful. How long have you been married?
So my husband and I have been together for a while, but we've only been married for 2 years. So when I was transitioning out, we decided to get married. Yeah, it just kind of worked out that way. While we were both active duty, we weren't married. Yeah.
Okay, but this is the dad, kids. This is the guy who's been in since the beginning with you with this relationship. If I could just
Not with my son. So
Okay.
we met when my son was 3, but
Okay.
that's
So that's a
when
long time. So he's 8 now, right?
he just turned 10.
Oh, 10. Sorry. I thought you said 8.
No, that's okay.
Awesome. Well, I am watching your guys' love story a little bit, and just how he treats you and communicates with you and just shows up for you. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about that and why you were open to being loved that way, and how long it took you to accept and receive the love and the things that he does for you?
It took such a long time. Honestly, this poor guy, he's patient. He's the most patient man I've ever met. Because he stuck by me no matter what, you know, and I pushed and pushed because I made him carry a burden that was not his to carry. You know, I didn't trust him. I didn't feel like I deserved love, the love that he was showing me. And I just thought it was weird that he was so nice. Like, why are you so nice? Like, that's crazy to think of now, but it's just like, I didn't trust. You must have an ulterior motive. Like, who would want, 1, a single mom, 2, someone that was so heavily broken. And I just didn't feel like I deserved it at all. Mm-hmm. But he was persistent and he stood by me, and it really showed me through the years that there are good men that do want to, you know, love me the way that he does want to love me, the way that I deserve to be loved. And it's not just for ulterior motive reasons and stuff. So
you're worthy of that. Very much so. Yeah, we all are. Even the broken parts of us are still worthy of being loved and treated with kindness and respect and all of that. So I'm thankful for his patience. And it's like, to me, the one thing that I think of too is, I mean, I've been married multiple times, and I have a wild story with, you know, trying to find validation through different means, all in the love and relationship area. And the one thing where I finally got the validation that I desperately needed, that all came from Jesus in my own personal story, and the patience of what I believe, the theology that I believe, the patience of God in my story on just waiting for me to turn into his love, you know? And so I see that manifest in this worldly exchange between you and your husband, just, you know, at a distance, because I'm not there, I'm not seeing it personally, but just at a distance. And I know there's still, I mean, every relationship, we still have our things and we still have our disagreements and whatever, but this unconditional love that just keeps manifesting, and it's bigger. The love is bigger than the argument. It's bigger than the disagreement. It's bigger than the lack of compromise, you know? And that's really, for me in my story, what started the healing for me. At what point in your story did the healing begin?
So I thought that I had done the work years ago, right? I started going to therapy, but like I said, I was going for anxiety and depression. I never actually said what was going on inside of me. And so I thought, like, oh, I'm doing the work, you know, I'm getting help for depression. I'm taking these meds. I'm doing these little things. And I never told my husband about my rape. I have now, but at this point I hadn't told my husband. So when I was getting out, I went to, well, a few months before I started getting out, I went to a meditation class, just random. And this is why I'm like such a huge believer of like divine intervention and stuff, is because this was so random. I had never been to this class. I didn't even know about it. It popped up online and I was like, I'm going to take a Thursday off and I'm going to try this. And I went, and this lady who's now like one of my very best friends cracked me wide open. Like I was just like wide open to everything that was happening in that room, and like ugly crying. I didn't even know any of these ladies that were in there. Like, and I realized, oh man, I have so much work to do. I haven't even touched the surface of what I really, really need to get into. And so I started seeing her as much as I could, but usually a weekly basis or every other week type thing. And that really started my healing. And that's when I realized, oh, I have to get out of this. I can't do 4 more years or 6 more years. Sorry. Everyone's like, it's 6 years. And I'm like, I won't survive. I cannot do this. And so I started the process. So I had 4 months to transition out. I was like, this was February. I was supposed to re-enlist in May, and I pulled my paperwork and I got out in June. So I had to do all the things within that time, right? So I went to a vet center to start my claims process, and I put on there like back pain, knee pain, the normal, like whatever. And he said, I gave the guy my record, and he went through it, and I went back the next week, and he was like, why are you so anxious? Why do you have so much anxiety? Everything in your record is like, you're seen for anxiety. I said, I don't know. I'm just an anxious person. Like, what do you mean? Some people are just anxious. Like, what do you mean? And he's like, okay, I'm going to get real with you. I'm going to ask you a question. You don't have to answer it, but I'm going to ask it. And he said, were you ever sexually assaulted in the military? And I just like lost it. I just like completely lost it. And I thought, oh my gosh, someone cares to know. Like, I didn't know that's what I had been waiting on for so long, but I had been waiting on someone to just ask me that question for 14 years. And I said yes. And he walked me over to their therapist, and I started talking to them, and he did all of my claims process. And that really helped me open up to my husband so I didn't tell my husband until I was getting out. And that day I went home and I was able to like actually talk about it openly, because I felt, okay, people are going to hear me. Like,
safe.
I matter.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So many things come to mind. The first question I want to ask is meditation versus mental health therapy. What's the difference, and how did the meditation group communicate to you in a way that felt healing? And not, there's a place for all of it. So I'm not discrediting one or the other, but I really want people to look beyond what they've been doing to maybe find something, if that's not working for you, to go deeper. Because you said, oh, I thought I had taken care of that, and she cracked me wide open. So I'm not discrediting, because I think there is a place for mental health professionals in what they do. Is a beautiful thing. But what's the difference? Why did it crack you open?
So I always tell everyone, like, because people ask me like, oh, is what you do therapy? And I'm like, no, what I do is like what you do in between your therapy sessions. And so what's different about it is like sitting and talking to a therapist helps tremendously of things that I maybe wouldn't have thought of to start coping. But with meditation, I'm really connecting to myself and what I already know I need. And it just feels so much more personal to me. And it just gives me like that validation, I guess, of what I already need to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So somebody else is giving you tips and practical advice to see the blind spots to help you navigate life. And then meditation's a way for you to look inward, connect inward, and to heal those parts that only you can do the work. It's all internal work. Yeah. Makes total sense to me. Thank you for clarifying. And then when this gentleman asked you that question, like, and it's a pointed question, and you thought, oh, somebody cares. The thing that reveals to me in that is that, you know, the secret, like you're holding it, you're suffering in silence for so long, and there's this little foothold and this little voice, and then it becomes a stronghold, and your heart is like really barred behind a deep tower, a tall tower, right? A thick wall. And also, like, now in your mind, the voice is so loud, like it's amplified so loud in your head that you're not worthy, that it's all you, it's all made up in your head. But like, to have somebody crack open and to be able to say the secret that you've been holding inside for so long, isn't that so liberating? Like, at that point, it was like, oh, it's exposed. Other people can see it. And then you're like, that very day you went and shared with your husband. Like, how liberating is that feeling? Because I've experienced it, but like, can you articulate how liberating that was for you?
Oh yeah, it was so liberating in the sense that I was able to be heard, which is what I've wanted for the whole 14 years. I want to be heard. I want to be believed. And that man, I don't even remember his name. I think it was his business card, but he really saved me in that moment, to where I shared with my husband. And then not only that, I started sharing all over the place. Like, I just was like, I deserve to be heard. Like, he gave that back to me. And it's just a feeling of freedom.
Yes, it is. So Linsey, I want to read this poem you wrote. It's on your website. It's on your about page. And I don't know, has anybody ever read this to you?
No.
Okay, so here we go. Prepare yourself.
Okay.
Called Lioness. She's just a kid boarding a plane, trying to act tough, but really afraid. Off to boot camp. Shouldn't she feel proud? Just keep your head down and try not to stand out in the crowd. She dons the uniform and raises her right hand. She swears to protect this beautiful land, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Maybe it's just the security we crave, the false sense of trust in a culture of lust that leads to her body being betrayed. But did you say no? Maybe you wanted it. It's all your own fault. Who could she trust? She woke up one day 14 years later and realized that she must take on rape culture. After all, it is the lioness that will move the vulture. Wow. I read that and I got chill bumps. I'm like, holy smoke, you're owning this, man. And you are showing up like the lioness. Like, we are on the prowl to take down this vulture culture. Like, girlfriend, I love it. I love this so much, and I love what you're doing. Can you tell us what Linsey Daley is doing? Being you're one voice, but man, you're on a megaphone, and I love what you're doing. But can you tell us what you're doing to take on this rape culture?
So part of what I'm doing is just putting myself out there openly and like very in a vulnerable state, to show people that there is hope and healing after trauma. You're not alone, and you don't have to suffer in silence. And I know that there's a lot of heaviness that comes into this situation and this conversation, obviously, but I really, really, really want to start pushing more that it's not your fault for what happened to you, but healing is our own responsibility. And in doing that, you're going to set yourself free. And in doing that, you can reach out to others. And in doing that, you can help, like, we can all come together on this walk for not only freedom of our own story, but justice for others.
Yes. So why are rallies and protests so important? Because you're leading them, you're showing up to them, you're speaking at them. Can you tell us why, as a woman veteran, whether you've experienced military sexual trauma or not, and I do believe every single one of us has experienced sexual harassment at least once in our time, and maybe not an assault, but every single one of us, the jokes abound. Like, it's there, it's a part of it. So can you tell us why it's important as a woman veteran to show up, to speak out at these rallies, and maybe what you're looking for in protesting?
Yeah, of course. So for me, showing up to these and speaking at these events and promoting these events really gets the word out there. Like, it shows people that, one, we're here. It helps people that may not have ever known that it was a problem see how big the problem actually is. And it gives a voice to the voiceless that maybe aren't ready to share yet, or maybe never got the opportunity to share. And it just really brings out the awareness of what's going on, because a lot of civilians don't know. Like, if you're in the military, you have a sense of what's going on, right? But if you have nothing to do with the military, they just see us on this pedestal of, like,
Greatness.
You served your country and greatness, and the military is so good to their people. And while some of that is true, there is another part to the military that we really have to talk about. And if we can have like open conversations and admit that these things are happening, then that's really the first step to healing and moving forward with these, in my opinion.
I think you could insert, I've talked to many women about Black Lives Matter and being a Black woman in the military, being a Black woman in society, being a mom of the epitome of what a Black man looks like, things like that. And one thing that really has resonated with me with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and just Black Lives Matter, not the movement, but just Black Lives Matter, right? Yeah. Is that what's your frame of reference? Like, if you don't have a frame of reference to know firsthand what police brutality looks like for a Black man, because you're a white woman from Idaho, then what's your frame of reference? So I think you said it so beautifully. Like, you have to acknowledge that. We have to speak out on it as that, so we can give somebody that frame of reference where we're coming from so they can understand it. And that's how you make change. The other thing to make change is, like, minority always changes the things for the majority, but there's a golden number. That golden number is usually 30% of the population of that community that needs change. You have to be at least at 30% capacity. And right now, military women who serve are about a 15 to 17% capacity in the armed forces. So this whole no enlistment, no justice, no enlistment movement, I am like not a fan, because one, it's a discredit for all of the women who've come before us. It's a discredit to my service personally. I take it very personal. Yes. Because I want young women to join. I mean, even though it's bad, there's the good, bad, and the different, and the really ugly. There's so much honor and legacy of the women you're representing, of the women legacy that you're stepping into. So I can't get on that bandwagon, because if we stop now at 15, 17%, guess what? It's never gonna change. The culture wins. These bad people, these bad pervasive things that are happening are gonna continue to happen. So we need to keep enlisting. We need to grow. We need to grow our army. And I say that not as like the U.S. Army, but the army of women, the sisterhood. We have to continue to grow and multiply to change the culture, so it's even better for those that are going to come up behind you. So you got to do the work. So what are your thoughts on that? The no enlistment, no justice, no enlistment.
Yeah, I don't support. And so I made a post, and I didn't say where I stood with it. I just said, do you believe like this way or this way? Some people say no justice, no enlistment. Other people say more women, like open up billets. We need stronger women. Because I just kind of wanted to see where people stood with it. But I will tell you now that for me, that's a no-go. Like, if I'm leading a protest, a peaceful protest, those are not the words that would ever come out of my mouth, because standing up to take on the man's world, but then giving them that world to just be a man's world because you're cutting women out, doesn't make any sense to me, right? So how can we scream for, we want to be treated we want to be treated equal, we want to be treated just, we want to be treated with respect, but we're actually not going to join you? To me, it doesn't align with and it does take away from the people that have gone before us and ourselves, right? Because all of us have done some really great things in the military. And
Mm-hmm.
although it wasn't the best experience of my life all the time, I'm really thankful for my time in the military. And I'm really thankful for all the things that I did go through. I don't think that part of my story owns who I am, but it has shaped me into who I am today. And for that, I am thankful.
Yeah.
And it's hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around that, I think, to say like, oh, you're thankful you were raped. Well, not in those words, but I am thankful for the things that I went through to be who I am today.
Yeah. Beth Moore has said she was molested as a child, and she said, would I ask to be molested again? Absolutely not. But it's shaped who I am, and it's given me this most precious gift of Jesus. And that's like her, she's in ministry. She's like the leading lady in biblical teaching. But it shaped her. It's made her, it's part of her story. But would she want to do it again? No. But, it's like you have to be able to hold both things. There's this tension in it, but you have to be able to hold both things at the same time. And guess what, ladies? You can do that. You can totally do the courageous and still hold on to the hurt, but still step into the healing at the same time. Absolutely. So you're going to, another thing I want to say real quick. I've heard somebody say, well, they opened all these jobs to us women, but they didn't prepare the culture for it. So to me, that's also like counterintuitive. Like, we're going to wait until they're ready, or we're going to bust through these doors and say, we are ready. We've been ready. Like my favorite quote of my own is, we've loved our country long before our country loved us back. Women were standing up, taking over at the cannons in the Revolutionary War, were spies and all the things before our country officially indoctrinated them into, accepted them into the full service. And so like, keep doing it, keep opening those things. Women, keep being bold to step into those spaces and reach out for a mentor and, help. Don't do it alone. So you're going to DC soon. Can you tell me what you're going to be doing there?
Yeah, so I haven't really publicized this so much because I don't want to give anyone like false hope or like them to latch on to something, but what?
When are you going?
Next week.
Okay, so this will go after you go. This will be published after you come back.
So I'm heading to DC next week to meet with the MCPON, which is the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy. So he's like the highest rank for all enlisted of the entire Navy. And so in January, I had reached out to him because he liked a LinkedIn post of mine. And I thought, oh, you opened the door. So here I am. I'm going to message you. And the post was about military training, like how I don't feel like we give adequate training on sexual assault and sexual harassment. And he liked it. And so I decided to message him and I said, hey, I saw that you liked my post. Thanks, for doing that. Is there any time that you could sit down to discuss? I would really love to discuss some ideas. And he was super nice, super open, like, yeah, let's talk about this. But then we went on vacation and then came back and coronavirus, and it just like has been this thing. So I had messaged him a couple of times in between, and we're like, yep, we're going to work this out. But obviously he's a super busy guy, right? And he's doing all these different things in the military. So it took us 8 months to kind of get together. And, but he has been open and receptive. I just do want to say that. And so we set up this meeting so that we could talk about ways forward and different ways to kind of like deal with the training aspect of military sexual assault and military sexual harassment.
And prevention of, I assume.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So even just the conversation that he's hearing you, I think is a win. That's a win. And the fact that 8 months later, he's still willing to engage a conversation, this is a step forward in the right direction. So no matter the result of what happens, but when you come back, if we could connect again and maybe share it the week that this goes live, because I believe I'm going to push this, not Labor Day week, but the following. So when you get back, just like if we could jump on that week on like Instagram Live or something and talk about that specifically, that would be so fun. Cool. Sweet.
And then I also, what I really respected of him was like, he acknowledged that it took a long time, right? So he had messaged me and said, thank you so much for your patience. This has taken a really long time. I promise you. Because, they had like the fire on the ship, and in California, they had a lot of like big things happen in the last 8 months that I'm sure he's been super busy. And, he was like very appreciative that I continued to ask for his, ask for the time and have the conversation. And something that I said to him was like, well, I could take it as you don't care and run with that narrative, but it's just not true, obviously, because you're holding space for this conversation to happen. Mm-hmm. So he's been like very open, and I know he's talked to some other enlisted females about different things. So I don't know, I'm excited to talk to them. And if, it's just a conversation of how do you feel, that's still big to me too. So
yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. That is a really great thing. And, there has been some great change in different areas of the military process, from PCSing to how you report or training, how you travel. There's been so many changes, right? And most of those began with one person saying something, or one right conversation, or the right person in leadership hearing it. And I'm just going to stand in that this is that time. So good job doing the hard work.
I'll claim it for myself and for all of us that, this is going to be a really good conversation.
It is. I already know it. Divine alignment, girlfriend. That is what that is. Is there anything we have not talked about today that you have a captive audience, people that already know you, or new listeners that you just want to say to them in this moment?
I just want to say that we're all one, we're all together. We can do this with the support of each other. And I just think that recently I've been seeing a lot of like catty or fighting or not able to get along in this movement space. And I just want to say that love will get us through this. Like, love each other, no matter where that person's coming from. We can have different opinions and still have the same outcome, right? Like, we all want the same thing. We all want the same thing is what I'm trying to say. So let's all come together and give each other grace and show each other love and work towards the exact same goal that we all want, because there's hundreds of different ways to get there. And none of us are alone. We're all in this together. But that's just been heavy on my heart the last week. And so I'll just share that.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. That's true. That is so true. I want to thank you for something that, so I did not know that prayer, and I wrote about this in my blog this week. And so I feel the tug of my heart to share this too, about prayer, and how I didn't realize how big prayer was going to be a part of Freedom Sisters. Like, I have a book that I write each and every one of my guests down in, and what we talk about in the show. Like, I am praying for every single person that has been on my show. And so I knew for me that was going to be a personal discipline. But I didn't realize how much people needed the space in prayer too. And I'm not a prayer guru. Like, I'm not trained. I just like come from the heart, and things that Jesus tells me to do, or I feel like the tugging in my heart, I just have learned to be better at being obedient. It's not one of my favorite things to do, but in the calling of where he's put me. And so I've prayed for a cancer sister who was struggling with cancer. And I'm not saying because of my prayer, but today she's no sign of disease in her body. She was going through chemo as she was pregnant. She delivered her baby, and then she went into radiation. There were extra spots on her liver and blah, 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 blah. And this was breast cancer. And today she can stand in this hope, and her strength and her faith is way bigger than mine. But I prayed for her, and that still is one of the biggest videos that I have on my Facebook page people have watched. And then I did the prayer for Save Our Children. I've prayed a few times. I've prayed 3 times now on the podcast itself, episodes. And now I prayed for an MST rally. Then they asked me to talk about spiritual healing. And then I was asked to pray for Tayu via you. And I did that. And now I'm praying, we're going to have a monthly prayer, because it's not just you asking for it, but other women are like, hey, can you pray for me? Or, hey, can we do this or whatever? And, I have this heart for ministry because it's a part of who I am. It's a part of my identity, but I also have this skill and these giftings of leadership and media. And so I'm trying to like hold those 2 things at the same time and move forward with Freedom Sisters. And I promise you, there are some big things coming from this brand forward for our community. But prayer is going to be one of those lasting legacies, I think, when people look back at my story, that I want them to realize the power of prayer and to stand in those tough spaces. And so, Linsey, one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing now on a monthly basis is because of your asking and your willingness to step into a space that I kind of needed somebody to push me into. Even though I kind of felt the tugging of my heart, I just didn't know how it was going to be responded within my community. And so now every month, the first day of the month, I'm going to start the month off. I was going to end the month in prayer, but I want to start the month in prayer. It's like starting working from rest and just centering ourselves. And so the first day of every month, by way of your helping motivate me to do it, 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll be standing on Instagram Live or Facebook Live. I'll let everyone know moving forward how to find us. But this is our time to come together as a community, as an interfaith community. In addition to the hard work that we're doing, we all are doing so many different things in the women veteran space, but to come together, to pray for each other, to lean on one another, to recenter. And I just really want to thank you so much for asking for that and being one of many who've asked for, but really spoke it to me in such a way that I know moving forward that I'm going to do it on a continuing basis. So thank you. I just wanted to say that to you.
No, thank you. Because I tried to share what I wanted to share on your thing and record it, and it didn't work, but I'll just say it now. And it's something that makes me super uncomfortable to say. So I know I need to say it. But when I went to your prayer group, I have been really struggling in my faith, right? Over the last couple of years. I don't know what it is. I just struggled, and I just completely shut down because it just felt hard and uncomfortable, which means I probably need to just step into it more, right? But instead I completely shut down. And you did that morning prayer for Save the Children, right? And it was another one of those moments through meditation that I felt kind of cracked open. I was here in my living room, just sobbing and I felt free. And it wasn't even me praying. It was just listening to, obviously I was praying as well, but I wasn't on there praying. And it just was this huge release for me. And I was oh man, this is where I need to be. This is where I need to connect. This is what I need in my life that I didn't know I needed. The same thing with meditation. So thank you, because it just was a freeing moment for me. And I thought, oh, I'm not struggling in my faith. I know exactly what I need. And that's exactly what I needed at exactly that moment.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that's what I hope, and sharing our testimonies and sharing our stories for whoever listens. And the things that I put out are to help heal and for somebody else to walk in this freedom of love, of faith, of hope. And so gonna continue to march it out, because that's who I am. And I'm gonna stand on that promise and know that, God is moving all throughout the world at all times. And no matter where you are, listener, Linsey, Carrie, in your story, God's there. And just when you're ready, when it opens up, the timing is always the right timing. I don't think God is ever too late or ever too early. So so join me every first of the month if you want. Anybody's free to join. You can send your prayer requests. You can type in the chat. That was real fun, actually, when people were typing their prayers in the chat, and then I was able to read them. So that was fun. Or you can jump on and join and show your face and pray for our community, or pray for something that you're struggling with, or ask for prayer that way too. So anyway, I hope to see you there, and everyone else who's listening. It will be a good time. All right. So to end all conversations, I have 3 final questions. Are you ready?
Yeah.
And I didn't prepare you, so
we'll
see what you got on the whim. All right. Do you have a favorite Bible scripture or verse or story?
I think anything in the Bible, I mean, pretty much the whole Bible says, but anything that just kind of pushes for hope and to have faith. I don't know, and just give yourself grace. Anything around those really speak to me, especially giving yourself grace, and because I don't think that you're able to give outwards if you can't give it inward. So
yeah, that's good. And I think of, hopefully this is right, Hebrews 6:19, he is the anchor of our hope. And then I think even if you have the faith of a mustard seed, that little seed grows to be one of the biggest trees. So it's crazy to think about. So even if you have just that little faith, then the fruit of your faith later will be bigger and greater than you could ever imagine. And so those are the 2 things that I think of when you're talking about that. And then the ultimate grace, right, is we are forgiven, and the grace is abundant and greater than anything else. I think as any gift, love is great, grace is amazing, and you need them together in order to move forward and to heal. And so I think those are all great, good things. What about a book recommendation? Something maybe you've read recently, or something that's changed your life?
I just got this book, Where the Crawdads Sing, and so I would recommend this. I really like it. I've only just started it, but I really like it so far.
Yeah, sweet. And then what about advice for a young woman who wants to join the military?
Sometimes when I get into my ego, a million times said, no, I would not let my daughter join. No way. Or my niece or my whoever. But the more that I grow through all of my experiences and just come to terms with myself, I would say do it. I know a few months ago I was like, no, but I think I was just in not the right place to be able to hear other people. And I would say go for it, but I would just say we have to be honest about what actually goes on. So all of the statistics, and I think this is something that the military can really work on, is they know all the numbers, they're all there, they're all in the reports. We don't have to repeat them to people, but we have to have honest conversations about what happens. If my daughter tells me when she turns 18 that she wants to join the military, I'm going to say, okay, please be aware that 20,500 people in the military sexually assaulted a year. So that she can make her own informed decisions about what she wants to do, but she knows real life what women go through in the military. And if we keep it a dirty little secret, that's what it is, right? It's just this festering, dirty secret. And people are not, you're conned into something. I think that's how I felt anyway. So I would say go for it. I would just say be mindful of what goes on in there. It's not trust all your brothers and sisters. There are good people in the military, but just like any other job, there's bad people too.
Yep. And depending on whether it's open enlistment and waiver upon waiver is the quality of character sometimes you're going to get. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. It's go for it, but know what actually goes on. Linsey, I like to quote my guest. There are so many. I think I have 5. So we may do a Linsey quote every day this week that we publish this podcast. So I just really, I love the work you're doing. I love how mindful you are of it. I love how gracious you are with your time, with your story, with your authenticity, because I think that's the key. That is the key to any movement, any good message, any good change but I think that's the key, is to be authentic. And so you're doing that really, really well. And it shows in all the work that you're doing. And even today. So I'm just so thankful that you've given me this time. Thank you so much for all you're doing, and stay in the fight And don't forget to recenter and take pauses and breaks when it gets too rough. But also, Linsey, you're doing a lot of pouring out. So don't forget to have people pour into you. So please reach out to me and let me know, because it would be my honor to do so.
Thank you. Thank you so much.